New picture for YouTube. For broadcasting pictures. Put it live. Oh, welcome in, everybody. Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. You're live with me, Mr. Murka, the Bearded Truth. Thank you for joining in. I'm glad that you guys have decided to join in. Thank you so much. One moment while I do share this out. I appreciate anyone who is watching this live, who also enjoys or takes part in that endeavor. I always do appreciate you guys' support and your guys' help. It's always needed and always hopeful. All right, 1 second. How's everyone doing? Everyone doing all right tonight? Uh-oh. About to get some noise. Bonnie Faye, welcome in. Welcome. All right. Almost done. One last group. And then we can get started. All right. I got everyone shared out now. So 3 big stories that I wanted to talk about. The first one, talk a lot about the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation hearing. That was just the first day of 3. How's it going, Platinum Mimi? Welcome in. So we'll talk about the Brett Kavanaugh. We will talk about McCain's replacement, and we'll talk a little bit about him. And we will also be talking a little bit about Trump and his recent activity. So lots to talk about tonight. It's going to be jam-packed, mostly covering the Brett Kavanaugh hearing, because that's the focal point. That's what everyone wants to talk about. That's what everyone wants to hear about. You can of course go to any pundit, if you will, Fritz or welcome, and you can hear about how if it's a Republican, right, how the Democrats are just unhinged. If you go listen to a Democrat or a progressive, right, just how egregious and how disgusting Kavanaugh is. So we'll get through the muddy waters. We'll get through all of that together, and we'll discuss this. I took quite a bit of notes. I only had about 3 hours to watch, so I was cramming through and knocking out as fast as possible. Thank you so much for the super hearts. So the basic gist of what Democrats were opposing was a lot of hypothetical things that Ben Sasse accurately described before anything really came out. And that was they're going to protest the 42,000 documents being dumped on them the night before, and not being provided enough time. This seems like a funny issue for them to be protesting after they've done the same thing and to be quoted as you have to pass it in order to know what's in it. But of course, when the shoe goes on the other foot, they're completely hysterical. It's just modern day politics. Instead of having civility throughout the political processes, constitutional processes, they would rather be hypocritical little children and cry about this and protest and actually have over the weekend have 22 members of the Democratic Party get together on a phone conference to set up how they're going to protest, how they're going to fight against the man being President Trump and his grotesque Brett Kavanaugh selection or nomination for the Supreme Court. So the Democrats right there are just, they are what they are, and that is they're stuck with the Trump derangement syndrome. No matter who Trump would have selected, right? If he would have nominated President Obama, they would have been stuck in this weird situation where they can't support him. They can't support Obama anymore because President Trump selected them. So now somehow President Obama would be some kind of a racist, xenophobic person because, when President Obama did come into office as president of the United States, he was not in favor of gay marriage. He was against it. So it's kind of, they will find anything, go out throughout history to find a way to oppose anything that President Trump would have selected instead of arguing on the merits of what Brett Kavanaugh has actually decided on his 307 court cases or 307 court decisions. Lost connection. Did you guys get the connection back? I think it's struggling. My wife is killing us on the interwebs. I'm kidding.
I have a fantasy football draft. There are priorities.
Why aren't you on the Wi-Fi or off the Wi-Fi then?
I am on the Wi-Fi. I'm actually doing work.
I'm saying take it off the Wi-Fi. Is it working now, Blind and Mimi? Oh geez. We good now? Yeah or nay? This is a struggle. The struggle. Thought we had better internet. Still frozen. All right. Yeah, but are you on the Wi-Fi or on the network?
I'm just on data.
Okay. I'm not sure what's going on with that. Can you bring the volume down? Thank you. Any better? Yes or no? Tartar sauce. So I'm not seeing any comments. I'm not seeing anything. I'm sorry, guys. This might end up just being a pre-recorded show. We'll distribute it out on Facebook, on YouTube, if nothing gets better. Okay, any comments? All right, I see a heart. I see a singular heart there, Mimi. Better? Okay, good. All right, so we're back in action. So, so the Democrats are just sitting there and they're playing their normal political partisan bullshittery. They're attacking Brett Kavanaugh because he's a selection of President Trump. They're using the same verbiage that they had set up, regardless of whoever the nominee was going to be. It's scripted. This has all been scripted against Brett Kavanaugh. This is scripted. If it wasn't Brett Kavanaugh, whoever it would have been, they would have been against it. And so you just pay that no attention. Pay no attention to when they say, "Look, you're not in favor of women's rights. Well, you're not in favor of the environment. You're not in favor of corporation or." In favor of the person, vice the corporations, right? The decisions that he's made are well-founded. In legal terms, they're right on the money when it comes to how the Constitution is written on most cases. There are a couple cases in which we've covered before, and there's some strong disagreements there. And the two that I will bring up is, of course, with the Affordable Care Act, he said that the individual mandate is not a tax, or is not a fine, but it's a tax. And so that was one way that the Affordable Care Act was justified. It was his decision and his verbiage on his opinion on that is what allowed the Affordable Care Act to actually be passed and the mandate to be upheld. So that was something in which Democrats today were talking about the Affordable Care Act and talking about the individual mandate, and it just shows the lack of care, the lack of scrutiny that they've provided by not actually understanding that Brett Kavanaugh was actually a big part. Still freezing. I will just keep going, and hopefully you guys are able to watch the replay. I'm so sorry.
It's going fine.
All right. Well, I don't know. They're saying it's freezing, and I'm dropping viewers like crazy. So, but they didn't sit there and actually look at Brett Kavanaugh and his decisions and how everything's been structured. They would rather just play the normal partisan political hackery and just say that he's against this, that, and the other because he is. In some ways, or in a lot of ways, he does stand on the conservative side of the aisle when it comes to these decisions. So if you're going to listen to somebody who's ignorant on the topic, who's not interested in actually going out and doing the research, as what Grassley pointed out, that there's two ways that the members of the Senate could go out and obtain this information. And rather than going through the process of going through his staffers and going in and researching the documents before they were released, they waited until the day of, or yesterday when the 42,000 documents were released, and then they go, it's just not enough time, right? And so there was an open invitation for them to go learn more if that's what they sought. They could have looked at the 307 decisions. Welcome in, Ashley. And instead of actually being informed, they would rather just stand up there and say, we don't know enough. Well, you don't know enough on your own decision. You should be able to go out there and you should be able to learn all these things. And instead you decided not to. So it's your willful ignorance on this is what you're standing against. And that's just despicable. We were talking about the two decisions in which Kavanaugh, in which they were not constitutional decisions. So the first one we had mentioned, the Affordable Care Act, where he actually defended the individual mandate, called it a tax, not a fine, and therefore it was okay. And that was one of the justifications that allowed the Affordable Care Act to pass through. The second decision in which he has been egregiously wrong was on the Fourth Amendment. He is actually justified. In one of his decisions, he said, look, the government should have the authority, should have the ability, regardless of the Fourth Amendment, to be able to go in and collect telephone metadata, right? Your cell phone metadata, so that way they can survey you. So this is just another way that a judge would be reducing the limitations placed on the federal government of allowing the people, us, the people, the individuals in this country, to remain free to their own sovereignty, to be secure in their person, papers, and effects, which was protected by the Fourth Amendment. So it's those two big decisions are something that Brett Kavanaugh is very weak when it comes to constitutionality, but neither of those were brought up with any level of intellectual honesty, with any integritous claims. So it's really disheartening to see members who want to oppose Brett Kavanaugh not actually stand there and be able to point why Brett Kavanaugh was wrong. Instead, they want to say, I forgot which senator said it, but she was just like, you want to overthrow or overrule the Affordable Care Act for being unconstitutional. And it's just like, that's the whole entire purpose of what the Supreme Court is, right? So you have the legislative branch, right? Article 1. Article 1 gives you Congress. Congress makes laws. President signs laws into effect. The Supreme Court then can look at those laws and say that's constitutional or that's not constitutional. If it's not constitutional, it's not within the constraints of the federal government, and it goes back to the states. That's how the 10th Amendment is supposed to work. And so what was being said there was by a senator, by a federal senator, is that we don't have to abide by the constraints of the Constitution. We should be allowed to go beyond those powers, those limitations. And Cory Booker talked about this as well. And when he was speaking during his opening statement, he was talking about how the founding fathers were flawed, and they were because they were inherently flawed, because they were people, they were standing in the way of progress. And so we kind of have to just ignore the Constitution instead of actually amending the Constitution and actually working within the constraints of the Constitution. We just have to ignore it, and we have to bypass it, and we have to do as we see fit instead of understanding the tenor of the Constitution, understanding why the Constitution has been a limiting document on the federal government, why it is important that they are limited to their power. And that is because the states are supposed to be the utmost power when it comes to between those two entities, between the federal and the state governments. And that is well documented throughout history. It's things like that where you see members of the Senate calling us, like Blumenthal calling us a democracy, we're a republic, and you see people just openly and freely advocating for dismembering the Constitution. This should be waking you up as the American people. You should always be afraid of this. You should always be worried about federal government becoming large, becoming encumbersome, and becoming overbearing into your own personal life, and controlling the ways that you have healthcare, the way that your business is run, the way that you decide to see fit, or the way that your state decides to see fit. I can't express it enough of how big of an issue that was. I want to really point out what Ben Sasse was saying this during his opening statement. He said a lot of great things, and if you guys are in favor of looking at it from a constitutional point of view, which I'm assuming by you being in here that you enjoy the Constitution in some capacity, I would recommend going back and looking at Ben Sasse. He was actually one of the first speakers to make his opening statement, and what he was doing was he was debunking a lot of the lies that were spread about Brett Kavanaugh, saying that no, he's not anti-woman, no, he's not anti-this, no, he's not anti-that, no, he's not in favor of having dirty water and dirty air, right? You can make those assertions if you want to, but there's no founding, no grounding to that. That was purely on the level of calling out fake news, hashtag fake news, if you will. But that was pretty important to see that part of it. He did not substantiate these claims, just like the Democrats didn't substantiate any of theirs. But he was at least pushing back against the narrative that followed thereafter. But he also talked about the protesters, the people who were protesting. If you guys saw in the first couple of minutes during the hearing, a lot of people were arrested for protesting during this hearing. I believe I saw a number where it was like 70 people were arrested during the protest of this. One of these people is Linda Sarsour. Linda Sarsour is a crazy lunatic. She's it's not because she's a Muslim. It's because she's just extreme with her views. She doesn't worry about the facts. She doesn't worry about the truth. What she worries about is her feelings and her agenda, and that is what she tries to do. She will rile people up, and she will use disgusting rhetoric in order to push support. And she was out there today, screaming out against Brett Kavanaugh and riling people up to be just as vocal as her. But we had a lot of people being protested there. And the important thing is that the judicial branch, right, Section 3 of the Constitution, they were not, Stefan, welcome in. The judicial branch was never created to be a political group. They were never created to, thank you for the invite, never created to really legislate in any way. They're not there to create laws or anything else. Welcome in, Boogie. Welcome in, Colleen. They were there to rule on the constitutionality. They were there to say, this is constitutional, this is not constitutional. That was their entire grounds of what they were supposed to be doing. But because, just like what Sasse has been saying, or what Sasse said and what I've been saying for forever, is that the federal government, the Congress, has been relinquishing its authority, its powers that were delegated to it, and been pushing that off to the executive branch, pushing that off to the judicial branch, instead of actually having to maintain its own control and having keeping its powers where it was delegated to. So by them thwarting that responsibility, they pushed it off to the judicial branch, which is now why the judicial process of nominating new Supreme Court justices is such a radical thing, why so many protests are happening, because our Congress fails to do its job. Dick Durbin, I'm not a huge fan of Dick Durbin, I'll be honest with you. I didn't actually get to see Dick Durbin's comments. I had to skip through. I know I was looking to see a couple people in specific to listen to. I didn't see Dick Durbin's. I know that I've heard about some of his remarks from the news, but I didn't actually get to hear him myself, so I'm not going to speak on his words himself. Another thing that Ben Sasse called out was the fourth branch of the government, the alphabet departments, right? Your DOJ, your FBI, all these different departments that are not spelled out in the Constitution, but have been granted authority in order to legislate, to be able to control. This is the Chevron idea. Yes, so true, Browse. What is that called? I am so bad. I'm so bad for forgetting this. Chevron. You need to get a mic. I do need to get a mic. I actually have a mic for YouTube, but I don't have it. Chevron deference. So Chevron deference is where you actually have these departments, and these departments are able to create legislation, create fines, create laws, essentially. And so the whole purpose of having Congress is that they're responsible to the people, but instead they've afforded out these powers, this legislative power, to these different alphabet departments, and now the people that we can hold responsible are not even the ones that are creating the ways that we have to live our lives. And that's a huge fundamental issue for our republic. And so he called that out, and I think that was beautiful, right? If you guys just go back and listen to Ben Sass in his entirety, right, his opening statements is beautiful. It's just absolutely beautiful from a constitutional point of view. It's beautiful. Then after that, we had Senator Coates. Coates called out Brett Kavanaugh of being against civil rights and affirmative action. Now, affirmative action is not a constitutional thing. Affirmative action is where you place a value on somebody's skin color or their ethnicity, and that's just disgusting. To think that somebody's skin color changes up the value, changes up the justification on if you should be hired, if you should be accepted, or if you should not, based on somebody's skin color. Last time I checked, that's something that's racist. So affirmative action is something that Coates was absolutely off base by thinking that that's in any way a proper way for a member of government to act, including somebody within the Article 1 being of Congress or of being Article 3, the judicial branch. When it comes to civil rights, we spoke about that a little bit ago. We talked about the Fourth Amendment. Yes, there are rights being violated with Brett Kavanaugh's decisions, but he was not speaking to that effect. He was speaking more to the effects of everyone has the civil right or the civil liberty of being able to go and decide to end the life that's within them. And he has spoken and he has had previous decisions in which it would look as if he would overturn Roe versus Wade. That's a big topic right now for Democrats because they're worried that they are not going to be able to kill off the young of men, right? On the basis of choice, lacking responsibility, but on the choice, you get to do what you want to do, and that's what they advocate for. It's just disgusting. And so Coates also called out Brett Kavanaugh for defending that presidents cannot be charged with civil or criminal charges while sitting as a president. On a federal level, that's true, right? You can't do it. The president has authority over the executive branch. He has the authority over those things. When it comes to a state level, no, he doesn't have that authority. The states can actually prosecute him, and that's something that can become an issue. Now, the idea of what Brett Kavanaugh was saying was you can't charge them while they are sitting president. So what you do is you indict them. Once they're indicted, then you can use that decision for Bill Clinton. It was the greatest decision ever, right? That they loved it, sit up on their wall. They're going to put it on their fridge. It was just the most amazing thing. And because now it's going against their bias, going against their view, they hate it. And that's unprincipled, that's hypocritical, and that's essentially what the Democratic Party is in a lot of ways. Thomas, I disagree with you entirely. Jeff Flake was amazing because he didn't say anything at all, right? He was just like, I support you. I don't have anything else to say. I don't want to come out and be in super support and, trash the Democrats. I also don't want to just come out and like be all lovey-dovey with you. So Jeff Flake was really the moderate of the senators I was watching. Didn't really say anything of importance, didn't say anything of value whatsoever. It was kind of interesting. But Blumenthal, oh man. Blumenthal. If you guys don't know about Blumenthal, you guys should know that he's just an idiot. So he called I have good notes on him. So he first starts off and he calls our country a democracy. If you guys believe that we are a democracy, I encourage you to find democracy in our founding documents. U.S. Supreme Court ruled in favor of slavery. Yes, they did, and it's disgusting that they did so. But that doesn't mean that you just discredit what it is that they do, right? That's why precedent is less important than what the Constitution and its tenor was. Exactly, we are a republic. So he also pointed out that people are wearing a shirt that says, "I'm what's at stake," and claims it's about abortions, gay marriage, clean water, checks and balances, right? Exactly what Ben Sass said is something that he's not going against other than abortion, right? Gay marriage, that shouldn't be a federal issue. I think that that's basically is how gay marriage was passed. Was they said, look, it's not a federal issue, it's a state issue. So if the states want to do it, then they can do that. If they don't want to, they don't have to, right? It's a state issue. It's not something that's within the confinements of the Constitution. Therefore, it's not our problem. It's not a situation we can handle. So the gay marriage thing, not something that's going to get overturned. Yeah, exactly, right. Win elections. That was also something Lindsey Graham was talking about. When it comes to clean water, checks and balances, that, and the other. This is something that he has been 100%. He's in favor of allowing the states to have more power. That doesn't negate having clean or dirty water. That doesn't justify in either way of those decisions. It's disgusting that they would try to act as if it does. He brought up. Okay, so we're gonna take a little sidestep because this one is kind of important to me. He brought up the DOJ in the Trump tweets. So if you guys recall all the way back to just a couple of days ago, I think it was yesterday. Donald Trump. Let me pull up the tweet because I don't want to misquote President Trump. But it was. I heard the tweet and then I read the tweet and then I hated myself. Because I knew people were going to support this. 2 long-running Obama-era investigations of 2 very popular Republican congressmen were brought to a well-publicized charge just ahead of the midterms by Jeff Sessions' Justice Department. 2 easy wins now in doubt because there's not enough time. Good job, Jeff. The Democrats, none of whom voted for Jeff Sessions, must love him now. Same thing with Lion James Comey. So what he did on that was he basically said, look, you publicized going after an investigation on 2 very popular Republicans, right? He made the justice system. He's setting a precedent that the Justice Department should be running on political a political map, right? You're looking at the future and you're saying, hey, the midterms are coming up. Let's not indict Republicans. Let's indict Democrats. This is contrary to law of the land. This is contrary to everything else, right? The 6th Amendment says, look, speedy and fair trial. So if you have the indictment, you go for it, right? It's disgusting that President Trump tweeted that out. It's disgusting that he holds that view. We understand that he's held that view. If something doesn't go in the way of the Republicans or in favor of himself, he does tweet against this. This is why a lot of people have been criticizing President Trump, saying he needs to get rid of the Twitter fingers. He needs to slow down on the tweets. He needs to be a little more principled. He needs to understand how laws work, how the justice system works, and everything else. This is something that is important, right? If the president of the United States, the commander-in-chief, the head of the executive branch, is trying to politicize the DOJ, he's no better than when Obama did it. He is no better than when Obama did it. So he loses that ground of being able to criticize President Obama for doing that against the Republicans if he himself wants to push for the same actions. It just needs to be fixed. It's disgusting that is something that is happening in our. I'm not saying that is not a bad thing that he's tweeting. I'm saying what he's tweeting, the content of the tweets really needs some fixing. If he won't fix the contents of his tweets, if he won't fix those things, it's just not in the best interest of himself, his administration, or his party, since he's so closely clinging to it on this manner. So on that one, Blumenthal definitely did hit a strike, right? That was a clear strike. That was a good hit. Does it really matter when it comes to Brett Kavanaugh? No, it doesn't. He was just coming out, and he was doing what Democrats do, and he was deflecting. So he got a good hit, and it was just not whatever, right? It was a bad timing, good hit. I applaud him for having his redress of grievances on that, but at the same time, he needs to. It was a good call. He also called Trump an unindicted co-conspirator. Now, this is disgusting. This is absolutely disgusting that somebody would say you're an unindicted co-conspirator. So if you're an unindicted co-conspirator and you're not named, this is referring to the Cohen case. So with Cohen, he was when Cohen got his charges, when he was indicted, basically he was saying that Trump was the unindicted co-conspirator. There's a lot of these claims that are coming out there. He is not an unindicted co-conspirator. He is not named. He is not labeled out there. So for a member of the Senate, in order to label Trump as that, is making a false charge, and that is disgusting. And it's also could be borderline libel, right? Because you are defaming somebody, you are aggressing against somebody with a false charge because it's not there. I got to go look at Kamala Harris, I guess. So let me pull up Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris. All right. So that was Blumenthal lost all points that he had, which was 1 point. He lost 2 for that. So he still is negative 5,000. Blumenthal in the beginning, when Grassley was doing his very first opening statement, Democrats had already orchestrated this over the weekend with 22 members of the Democratic Party. I'm not going to get Woodward's book. It's already been debunked in a lot of ways. Democrats got together over the weekend, over the 3-day Labor Day weekend, and they decided that they were going to protest. They were going to fight against the hearing. They were going to do anything and everything that they could in order to dismember the hearing and having it pass through. This is what Democrats have been promising since second one of Trump saying it was Brett Kavanaugh. If you guys remember back, right, they had poster boards and they were standing outside and they had everything filled out. Blank is a racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, xenophobic, deplorable, blah, 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 blah. And all they had to do was just take their Sharpie, write in the name. And then as soon as he was announced, then you had a slew of the senators and members of Congress standing there, and they had their scripts ready. They were ready to tell the people how disgusting that certain nominee was, because they obviously knew who President Trump was going to select, and they had the speech just ready for them. But so with all of that understanding, no. And impeach X, exactly. What was that? That was a Women's March website, just impeach XX, right? The XX was a placeholder for putting the name in, and they never filled it in. And so, they posted it, and then they realized, oh, crap, now everybody's seen that we're just idiots. So from that, Blumenthal, he was one of the first vocal guys, and he was calling to adjourn because the 42,000 documents of not having enough time to review them all. I think that is a serious issue. I think that the documents should have came out. There should have been more transparency, but both parties are guilty of playing politics, and that's not good, right? The government is not inherently supposed to be ran with politics. They're supposed to be ran with an understanding of what their job is and what their job is not to do. And both parties are guilty of throwing out civility, of throwing out objective truths in order to have their side win. This is another one of those crazies, another one of those situations in which it wasn't good. So I agree with the idea of them not having enough time, and there's a huge issue with that. But at the same time, you can't expect that the opposing party, welcome in, Kimmy, the opposing party of when you said you have to pass the bill to know what's in it, to not play the same game as you. But yeah. He also brought up a couple other stances, and he said he's worried about these precedents being removed, but he refused to in any way defend them from a constitutionality standpoint, which is the whole premise of what the judicial branch is there for, especially what the Supreme Court is there for. And it needs to be, that's what your basis should be. Look, this is where the Constitution says, this is what the precedent is. It's in line with the Constitution. You can't fight it. If you can't point to the Constitution and justify why this precedent should be saved, then that precedent should be removed by our republic. Also, a funny point from Blumenthal's, he said, when referring to how much time he's been taking, right, everyone was taking a lot more time than what they were supposed to. Grassley called him out for taking a long time, and he was just like, well, I'll get back to it. I will be very judicial, right? That was his quote. I will be very judicial. And And so Grassley was like, I don't know what that means. And welcome in, Denise. And what was funny was Feinstein, who was sitting right next to Grassley, you could hear her almost borderline like a hot mic, and she was like, me neither. Like even the Democrats was like, I don't even know what this guy's saying. He's just saying mumbo jumbo. It's just like a word salad. He's just talking just to talk. So Blumenthal once again. Babe, can you keep that down a little bit? Thank you. So the Democrats weren't even on board with providing their own. Yeah, her eyes were rolling like crazy. And one thing that Blumenthal said, and it was a direct quote, was, "This has been a great disservice to you." Right? And he was talking about the entire nomination process. Is a disservice to you, because he was talking about like the transparency of the documents not being provided out there and everything else. Yeah, the wife has been extra noisy today. I'm gonna have to give her a couple extra lessons.
Echoes.
Yeah, but you were all the way over there. Anyways, back to my point that I was making when my wife rudely interrupted me. It was amazing that Blumenthal was saying this is a great disservice to you, and then as he bashes his views, his opinions, and documentation without pointing at the constitutionality of it, as well as not being able to point to actual decisions in which he was pointing at. Instead, he was just pointing to the ether and just using that same Democratic talking point of he's against the rights, he's against the liberties, he's against this, that, and the other. She violated it first. And Blumenthal, along with every other Democrat out there, would not actually point out the Fourth Amendment issues. They were not willing to point at the Constitution. And so that just shows you their stances were all in a farce, right? It was all on their feelings, and it wasn't based on any form of purpose or understanding of what the judicial branch was about. It needed to be, it's just disgusting to see the way that this was all happening. So Boogie said to go check out Kamala Harris. Her first pinned tweet is, "The president is unindicted co-conspirator on federal crimes and has nominated someone to the Supreme Court who believes the sitting president should never be indicted." No, should not be indicted while being. Oh. All right. Let's break this down. Let's break down her first tweet, her pinned tweet. "The president is an unindicted co-conspirator." He's an unindicted co-conspirator, and he's not even named, so therefore he's not an unindicted co-conspirator. You have to name somebody in order to be a co-conspirator, and of course he's unindicted because he's innocent until proven guilty. And so if he's not even being labeled as something, then he can be charged for this. No, I don't think that Obama should have, because he didn't have control over the Senate. Elections have consequences. And he has nominated someone to the Supreme Court who believes the sitting president should never be indicted. That is a complete farce. That is completely lie. The idea of what Brett Kavanaugh said, and I believe there was two members of the Republican Senate that actually pointed it out. Or no, it was just merely Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham had pointed it out and actually read from the text, and he said, "Look, you don't have somebody." You don't prosecute a sitting president while they're the sitting president. You impeach them, and then you go after the prosecution. Right? So in merely one statement, she has lied twice. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful how quickly she is to lie. It's clear that when she was the Attorney General for California, she was disgusting, as said by many people who live in California, who've pointed out how disgusting of a person she was, not fighting for cases she should have, and going after cases that maybe she shouldn't have been involved with. Her as a sitting senator from California as well, she has been fighting against Trump and not been fighting on principle, not been fighting on anything other than her feelings and progressivism. So she just completely discredits herself all the way through. Here's a tweet from 9 minutes ago. "Kavanaugh would have a direct impact on the air our children breathe, voting rights, and whether millions of Americans have access to healthcare. He's a threat to our future and our children's future." You know who actually gets to decide on access to healthcare in our constitutional country? It should be your parents. That's how that works. Voting rights, everyone has a right once you're an adult, unless you're a felon, which I do disagree with that part. And has a direct impact on the air our children breathe. So if you elect Brett Kavanaugh to the judicial branch, to the Supreme Court. He is going to ensure that all of the air that you breathe is disgusting. He wants you to breathe disgusting air. Believe in Kamala Harris because she is an arbiter of truth. Oh. This hearing is about who will sit in a House that symbolizes our system of justice in this country. Let your senators know that you think Americans deserve a fair process and a complete accounting of Kavanaugh's record. Our children will choke. Yes, it's amazing. It's just amazing the way that this woman will happily lie in order to serve her purpose. Yes, bless her for protecting our oxygen because she is sitting there and wasting it routinely. But it is what it is. Everybody will die, absolutely. But I wish I could just sit there and just read through everyone's tweets and just break them apart. We can go through all the different senators, whether they're Republican or Democrat, and find out when they care about the Constitution, when they don't care about the Constitution, when they care about laws, when they care about actual rights, when they care about the people, and when they're actually just projecting. And most of the time, when you look at a Democrat, it's just projecting. It might be a good show. I think that would be interesting to do that for a while. Maybe I'll talk to the wife and see if she'll let me do an extra show.
When?
I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Okay.
Yeah, just one show a week, just to tear up Twitter. We already died. Let's go through the list. So if President Trump gets elected, we'll all die. Boom. If the Obamacare individual mandate dies or goes away, we'll all be killed. We're dead twice. Net neutrality, if it goes away, the internet dies, which means we die. So we're dead again. If the tax cuts goes through, we'll die again. We'll also 5 different world wars in which we'll all die. We were supposed to go to world war with North Korea. That hasn't happened. We're supposed to go to world war with Iran. That hasn't happened. World war with Russia. That hasn't happened, even though Russia was also So we were Russian puppets, but we were also supposed to go to war with Russia, right? It was one of those weird stances where Trump's against and in favor of Russia, and they were also in the same way. I don't know. That doesn't really make sense, but so we can just go through the list, and it's just a long list of how how we were supposed to die 15 times over if we listen to the Democrats. It's just it's just disgusting the way that's come. So John McCain, right? The deceased has finally been replaced. His seat has been replaced. It is by law. It was granted to the governor of of Arizona to be able to decide on who will take over the seat until the special election happens. I have not heard more on Bill Browder. So the replacement is former U.S. Senator John Kyle. John Kyle, it's an interesting way. That I can go to Trump's Twitter real quick, and he actually was tweeting about the book with specific notifications. And the wife's talking, and it was not Cindy McCain. No, so that was the idea. But the way that it's set up is the governor gets to decide on who goes into office until there is a special election, because we had to enact the 17th Amendment, push for more democracy rather than maintaining a republic. And so the replacement is John Kyle. He was a man that helped out with picking up with for the nomination. He is also being the successor. That also means that he will be getting to vote on the confirmation of Kavanaugh. We know that Kavanaugh will pass, right? All of this standing up is all just projection. It's all just trying to act like they really care. And we know that it's all a farce. We all know that it's just them trying to make sure that their voices are, because we know that the 51 Republicans are going to vote in favor of Kavanaugh, and we know that there's going to be a couple Democrats that are also going to vote in favor because they don't want to lose their seats when it comes to the midterms. That was why this was such a power play by the Republicans to decide, hey, we're going to have Kavanaugh right before the midterms, right? We're in September now. November is just right around the corner, 2 months away. It's going to be a big thing. And so if they vote against it, right, they're voting against the Trump agenda, and that could very well be their ability to maintain in their seats. So a lot of the volatile Democrats are going to be voting for this. So we will see probably around 54 to 57 votes in favor of Kavanaugh. I think that's the right decision on some grounds. I still disagree entirely on the Fourth Amendment and on the Affordable Care Act thing, like we spoke about before. So I will have to look up more into Bill Browder and come back to you on that. I'm not very up to date when it comes to him. So he was singled out in Putin's offer. That's all I know. Browder's juicy now that McCain is gone. Gotcha. So between those things, right? Between the Brett Kavanaugh, the Trump attacking the DOJ openly through tweets, and McCain, right? It was three conservative people that are being attacked in the media. Some of it's rightfully so. Some of it is playing into this chess game that everyone wants to attribute. I think that right now, from the takeaway from the last 2 days, I'll have to check out Stranahan's video on that. That looking at that for the past 2 days and how all that's being played out. I'm wondering about the idea of people being principled out there. I've seen people. You can see people that have been like super pro-Trump, but they're able to criticize that tweet, and I think that's the right decision, right? Regardless if you are an absolute 100% supporter of Trump, you can also say maybe you shouldn't be trying to politicize every bit of the government. That's not what the Department of Justice is for. That's not what our judicial branch is for, and that's not acceptable. That's the correct answer on that one, 100%, right? Whether you're in favor of Trump or against Trump, you should be able to stand there and say that. Now, you don't get to say that if you're like, I think it's good when Obama did it, but it's bad when Trump does it. You have to say it's bad when either way it's going. Yeah, I'll check that out, Colleen. I'm so tired. I'm so frustrated. And last night I was on the Common Discourse with Boogie himself. And that was one of the things that we were talking about was the idea of people being principled. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up, and I failed to do so, was this partisan tribalism, right? This tribalism of either whether it's idolatry or because of partisanship. If it's because of a person or because of a party, and therefore you're justifying everything, but then outside of that, anything that's outside of the where you favor, right, they have to adhere to these rules and these standards. You're not going to be acting in the best interest of welcome. You're not going to be acting in the best interest of the rest of America, right? If you're only critical of one side or one portion or one group, you have to be the same critical across the board, and making that your stance and actually striving to do that and actually working to ensure that you remain consistent is how you can actually make a name for yourself. Keeps Georgia on my mind. That's how you make a name for yourself. That's how you are somebody that people will come to and they will ask you for an objective view. We all know people that we can go to, and if we want something spun in a positive way or in a negative way, regardless of whatever it is, we know somebody that we can go to and get that information. Is that something that you strive for? Or is that something that you find entertainment from? Is that something that you ideologically believe in? If that's something that you believe in and that's the way that everything should go, you're not worried about the truth. You're not worried about the end goal. You're worried about protecting your feelings, right? You're trying to go out there and get your confirmation bias on them. You're trying to add to it instead of trying to take in both sides, understand it, and actually weigh things the way that they are, right? How many people can actually say that they looked at Blumenthal today and say everything that Blumenthal said, because he's a Democrat, because has Trump derangement syndrome, because he is so against the Constitution, because he calls it a democracy, because of this, that, and the other, that everything that he says is false, right? That's not true, right? He did have some good talking points. He had some valid points. He, of course, diminished those by being hysterical and being unhinged in other parts of that. But we have to actually take things apart, look at them in an objective point of view, and actually try to understand, is there validity to this? Don't look at the source, look at the information coming from the source. That's what I urge you guys all to do. And I know Boogie actually comes out here and he destroys CNN on the weekly basis, right? And why is it so hard for legitimate criticism of Trump to get out? Has the outrage taken over? Yes, the outrage has taken over. Because why? Because those that are unprincipled are usually the loudest, right? Let's look at I'm not sure of how many people are actually involved in true intellectual debate over policy, over philosophy, and over these things, but it is done in a reasonable, calm demeanor. It is just the same way that I'm talking to you now. That's how these debates can happen, right? You make good points, the other person rebuttals, and you have this continuing on, right? Boom, 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 right? You have somebody that is not willing to be somebody who is disingenuous, somebody who lacks information, somebody who lacks facts, and you put them in that same conversation. As soon as there's a little bit of resistance against what they say, as soon as there's a little bit of a pushback on asking for facts, on asking for stories, they start yelling. They start screaming, they start crying, they start becoming hysterical in every sense of the word. And then you lose any ability for that to have any context, any truth to it. And so that's the left right now, right? They don't have facts, they don't have truth, they don't have history, they don't have philosophy behind them. What they have is their feelings. And so they are so outraged, they start yelling, and then somebody else goes, I like what you're yelling about. I'm going to yell here. I'm going to yell as well. And then you just have you have this mob rule. And that essentially is what the left has become. They've become a giant mob across the country. That's why we hear these hysterical, unfounded truths being spewed consistently. It's being spewed about President Trump. It's being spewed about the Constitution. It's being spewed about Republicans. It's being spewed about individuals. It's being spewed about the size of the alt-right, about these Nazis, about white supremacists. They're even lying about the Antifa, right? We had a member from CNN come out and say that Antifa was a male black based group, and that's completely untrue. That's not true in any capacity, right? Antifa is made up of like 5% ethnic people. It's mostly all white kids. It's mostly all like 27 and younger white guys and some girls, in which they have been, demonstratized as being somebody who lives in their basement and lives off of their mom's meatloaf. What was that movie? Oh no, I'm missing the movie quote. Mom, make me meatloaf. That's what they've been viewed as. But really, right, the left has foregone being involved on an actual intellectual level. And that's why the hysteria has been so loud. That's why we can't see actual true criticisms of that. That's why I encourage you guys to come see me, because I'm going to be objective about this criticism. Mom, meatloaf. It's that when you lose that ability to have well-founded criticisms, you just become white noise, and that's all the left has become. We ignore them. Thomas, you asked, do you think NFL players should be forced to stand? No, I disagree with forcing anybody to do anything. Next question. It's it's really stupid the way that this is all being played out, and I'm tired of the white noise. I'm sure that you guys are all tired of the white noise. Sure, it provides you with a lot of entertainment because you go and watch Boogie, and Boogie just shreds apart all of their views like word by word. Word by word, he will just destroy them, and he'll be like, "No, they used and in the wrong way. They used the wrong there." Like he can tell. The way that they said that, they said the THERE, and they meant the THEIR. They already messed that up, right? Boogie's on point with destroying the left. So if you guys want some entertainment, make sure you go check out Boogie. But yes, the well-founded criticism is important because it does take time. It takes research. It takes actual learning things. Can we honestly say the left is not really involved with the learning curve, with actually learning things? They just learned about their feelings. Nah, it's fine. And that's where we got to drive them. We got to bring them in with facts and feelings and get them onto our side. I make average look good. Whatever, Boogie. You're downplaying yourself. Such a humble man. Such humility. That was the other thing I did want to talk about, and I appreciate you, Thomas, for bringing it up. I know that you brought it up and kind of seeing how right-wing I was. I guess you haven't picked up on the idea that I am a libertarian, that I'm not in favor of forcing people to do anything beyond their own will. But if you guys have somehow missed the meme dumps of what's been going on with Nike, Nike's lost $4 billion in value over the weekend because they decided that Kaepernick is now going to be the face of them, and they put an ad out with him and saying, you know what, just sacrifice everything, or whatever it was. Even if it means losing everything, just do it. And really looking at Kaepernick gave up nothing, right? Before he was doing his protest, he was already being benched. He was fading away out of the NFL. He wasn't really desired. And so he decided to take a stand in order to try to hold on to it, right? Because if he takes that knee, he's going to be able to ensure that he remains on the team. Because if he kneels and he protests and then they get rid of him, he can say, look, they got rid of me because I was protesting. And so it was a way for him to be able to be protected. And so he did that. And then he was offered a couple of deals. He was offered from the Ravens. He was offered from the Seahawks. And I think he was even offered from the Oakland Raiders. And he turned down all of those. He either turned them down by his own decisions or by the decisions of his girlfriends, in which his girlfriend had said some things. I think that was in regards to the Ravens decision, and she had shot the deal for him. So it was by his own decisions and by his own actions of who he affiliated with that he lost those deals. Now, Nike has come out and has provided him with a couple $1 million deal in order to be a part of these advertisements. He has not in any way possible sacrificed everything. But we could talk about Pat Tillman, who actually was killed, who left the NFL, went into the Marines, went over there and was killed, right? He did sacrifice everything. That was something a lot of conservatives, a lot of people on the right wing wanted to point out, and I think that there is some truth to that. I think that's somebody that we should be pointing out. Somebody who actually did sacrifice for this country and actually went and died. There was an officer that I saw that was getting floated around as well from 9/11. And that officer went out and saved somebody from the World Trade Centers and went back in to go save somebody else. And he was actually killed, right? That was somebody who sacrificed. And he also had a Nike glove on during that. And so that was the big focal point. That was somebody else who had sacrificed everything and just did it, just went in and did it. And so there's plenty of things out there that they could have focused on, but instead they focused on Kaepernick. And my views on Kaepernick and the whole thing, just so that people are clear, I don't have a problem with him protesting. I have a problem when the NFL says stop protesting and you continue to protesting. You are kind of an employee there, so you kind of forfeit some of your rights while under the guise, or while being employed, and especially while on the job. So I think that Kaepernick may have had some good ideas. I think he may have had some good stances, but he portrayed that in a horrible way by utilizing the national anthem in order to rile up and anger the opposing side, the people who already disagreed with him or who may not disagree with him or agree with him. But because he went against the national anthem, he already ostracized a large population in this country. Being an NFL player, he does like Castro, which is disgusting. But being an NFL player, being a celebrity, being somebody that people want to actually see, he has this amazing thing where he goes, I want to have a news conference, and the news goes, here's a microphone, go ahead and talk into the mic. What do you want to say? Right? That is something that is easily accessible to these people. And instead of utilizing it in a way that could have actually united people, he actually divided people. This has been the big issue this entire time. I don't have a problem with you protesting. Protest all you want to, but you don't get to cry when your employer tells you not to, and then they fine you or they get rid of you for you protesting. Turns out your First Amendment right is just you as a person. It's not your business can do whatever they please. The First Amendment only says that the federal government cannot prevent you from practicing your freedom of speech, from protesting, from redressing your grievances. They can't stop you. Your employer can. They can remove your money. They can reduce your pay. They can do as they please because they are your employer. It's amazing. Truly is amazing. Yeah, like it's amazing to me. Welcome in, McCain. It's amazing to me how many people think that if I just divide the country, somehow my message will get heard better. My message will get heard gooder if I just make people angry. No. Sure, you'll be noticed. You will be noticed, but you will be hated. You'll be hated by the side that you're trying to reach to. Because if you want to make change, you have to unite people with love, with compassion. And that's a message that Martin Luther King portrayed, lived in, and embodied entirely. And that's why he was he made such an impact on this country. It wasn't because he was out there dividing people, because he was loving people and he was helping people and he was encouraging people to come stand with him. But the NFL doesn't want to do that. You think the NFL should follow the Constitution? So you think the NFL should. Why should the NFL follow the Constitution? Should the rest of the country or the country follow the Constitution? Should a person to a person follow the Constitution? That's why he did peacefully protest. So he wasn't. So that's fine that he peacefully protested. That's fine. But the problem was that he was angry at the NFL for criticizing him for him doing that in that manner. He was doing it in a way against the national anthem, and so he was obviously ostracizing a lot of people that have a lot of patriotism. And now we have people that think that patriotism is somehow a disgusting thing. Patriotism is not inherently good and it's not inherently bad. That's because that works for the USA will work for the NFL. So it doesn't work for every business. Give all the players guns. Oh man, I almost got an interception, but then I got shot in the kneecap. Oh man. That's awesome that your mom's listening. Hi, Mom.
My mom?
No, Colleen's mother. It's it needs to be. No, I don't think that the NFL, I don't think that any corporation should have to follow the Constitution, right? I don't think that that's the way that should go. If you think that each corporation should have to follow the Constitution, then everybody has due process. Everybody has the freedom to say whatever they want to say. They can be free to do as they want to do, and there's no real structure when it comes to how your employees have to follow in the business structure. I think that that's disgusting. If a business wants to be anti-gun and not allow their people to have guns in their place of business, that's their decision to do so. Right? Would you agree with that, or do you think that everyone should be able to have a gun? Do you think that everyone should have a due process and everything else? No, I completely disagree with you. See, I think it's also interesting that you want to point out just this one corporation should follow the Constitution, but would you agree that the government should follow the Constitution, Thomas? Can I ask you for some consistency on this? Levi spoken out in favor of gun control. Who's Levi? I'm sorry. Do you think that the government should follow the Constitution? Of course, every private business owner has the right to have procedures. Exactly. They have the right to do as they want to do. Because if you're in favor of the government following the Constitution, all welfare, all entitlement systems, Levi's, okay, all entitlement systems are suddenly null and void. Buying Nike? No, I'm not buying Nike. I don't live that kind of life. It's not that I'm protesting them. I'm not boycotting them. The free market is doing what the free market does. People are protesting it. People are boycotting it. I'm not boycotting it. I just don't buy Nike generally. Yeah, it's exactly. The government is supposed to be bound by the Constitution, but it's not. No, just in this case, it's the only thing that will work. No, I completely disagree. I think that the free corporation should be able to do as they please, but at the same time, I think it's interesting that you want a corporation to follow the Constitution, but you don't want the government to follow it. You buying In-N-Out, bro? I don't have In-N-Out near me. I wish that I did because I've heard many great things about it.
It's so good.
But I've never had In-N-Out. That's been something that's been on my bucket list. Also, White Castle, but it's not a political thing.
White Castle?
I've never had White Castle.
We're going.
So those two places I've never had. I've always wanted to. It's not a political decision. I generally don't get involved when it comes to political boycotts. Corporate police state. Progress is fascism. I love it. See, I can't say it's overrated because I've never had it. There's plenty of little chain restaurants that I've never had, and I've had the desire to. But we'll see how life goes on, and we'll see if I do get to try some of those. But be near a bathroom. I'm realizing like people that used to follow me are just following me again. I don't know. It's weird. Chick-fil-A. We have a Chick-fil-A down here. I'm not a huge fan of chicken, so I don't eat Chick-fil-A that often. The only chicken place that I love and adore
Raising Cane's.
Raising Cane's. Yep. But if a corporation takes tax dollars or subsidies, they should be constitutional also. I don't think that they should be able to get tax dollars or subsidies because that's not Congress's authority under the Constitution. So if we're going to hold one corporation to be constitutional, shouldn't we hold the government that's providing it? I had to refollow a lot of people. Interesting. I don't know what my blood type is. I think it was O. I think it was O negative. Making someone stand like trying to get next level to like making someone one stand like trying to get next level. What? I don't know what that means. Why do they play the anthem again? They played that because they wanted to get more people involved. They wanted to actually. So there's the way that worked, right? Because the NFL has not been playing the anthem for a long time. They actually played it just shortly after. They started shortly after the 9/11, actually, I believe it was. And so the idea was to build up patriotism, to get people excited about America and get to rally against the outcries against the idea of the Afghani and Iraqi war. They did that during Vietnam, did they? Let me verify that. Okay, so it was 2009. So it was 8 years after the war, and so this was like a big thing. Yes, exactly. It's a government trick. It was the NFL was trying to get people riled up for patriotism, right? A lot of people were focusing on the NFL, but they weren't focusing on the government, and they were trying to get that. I think you're reading too much into the national anthem if you're talking about the Constitution. So this has always been a political move. This has always been a big government thing to try to justify more people liking it. I'm not in favor or against any entity, any corporation, any employer playing the national anthem, and they can do it. I never liked the military sponsorship in NASCAR. Yeah, I mean, NASCAR is kind of expected because let's face it, right? If you're like me, a white trash, inbred hillbilly, I'm not white trash, I'm not inbred, but if you if you are the kind of person that you like NASCAR, a lot of people that do enjoy NASCAR are quite nationalistic, and so it doesn't amaze me that would be one that is very militarized in that way. And I agree with you; it is taxpayer money and should be removed. Because I stand against any government spending. Let's be honest. I stand against most of it, and I disagree with it, but it's understanding as to why that was. And I'm surprised with a lot of the ways that our politics gets interjected into our patriotism gets interjected into our everyday life. So one car gets taxpayer funding for his ride, the others don't. Yes, exactly, right? Jimmy Johnson's coming around the corner, his tax-funded car. Yeah, getting new recruits. Exactly. You get people all excited, and you're like, "Look how cool they are! I want to go work in the Navy. I'm going to go in the Navy. I'm going to go see places." What'd you see? I saw the inside of a giant submarine. Where else? Well, I went to Florida. You watched Dale Earnhardt Die? Yeah, that was my wife's favorite and her father's favorite, and so they saw that as well. Catastrophic day for them. Life goes on. We learned a valuable lesson that day. If the turns only go left, you don't make a right. That's all I'm going to say.
You're an asshole.
I know. Is that too soon? Everybody? I think that was too soon. But, yeah, no, not for Dale. If you enlist because Army is written on the Dodge, you're not smart enough to enlist. I agree. No, Bowles, I was a Navy veteran. So, I mean, I will prod fun at the Navy. I was a submariner, and that was actually, I only saw Florida and I saw Bahamas. Those were the two places I went and saw. Yeah, it's amazing how some deaths are more memorable than others. Wish you would talk on there's never been a white man convicted of murder, black, excited. What? Convicted of murder, black, excited in Florida. What? Okay. Oh, you're good. No worries. There's never been a white man convicted of murder, black, excited in Florida. Can you rephrase that last part? Convicted of murder, black, executed in Florida. There's never been a white man in Florida that's been executed. I would have to do a lot more research on that and to understand like what the severity of those cases were and how often death penalty is provided, and how everything is done. Not until last year. So I would need to look in the severity of cases and actually look into that. I'm not going to speculate on just what you've provided with me. I'm not going to attack your credibility on things, but I've seen in the past where you've portrayed a very opinionated. No, I'm not going to take a second and Google it. What I'm telling you is I'm actually going to get involved and actually do research. That takes more than a second. So I will look into that. And I think that just saying, look, this happened for this one, and this is the way that it's happened for this skin color and this skin color, while ignoring the entire precedent of everything that's gone on, and you pushing for me to continue doing that, I think that's just where I think you're getting ridiculous. I'm not afraid. Thomas, I told you I was going to go look it up. I was going to actually do research on it. And you're telling me that I can't be informed on this? I think that that's where you become disingenuous. I think that's where you become kind of forceful, and it seems hypocritical, or not hypocritical. It seems really disingenuous, and it seems very, very disgusting in the way that you're acting. I think that you should be encouraging me to become as informed as possible in order to actually portray a message in which you're asking me to portray to people. But if you just want me to take a quick second, but if you just want me to go with what the mainstream media is saying, or what these sources, which I've always found to be discredited easily, if you want me just to go off of them, then why don't you do that? Thomas, this is where I think that you just become unhinged. This is where I would point you and say you're probably a Democrat, and I know you're a Democrat. Use your source. Use your source. All right, I need you to spell properly now. It's showing your hysteria. It's showing your unhingedness. And I would recommend. How's it going, Marine Mom? Just Google it. Now he's sick, Uger. He is sick. Just Google it. Google it. Oh man, it's beautiful. I have been allowing you. I've been giving you credit where credit is due. I've been Thomas, I really need you to stop being stupid. Like you were showing that you're being an adult. All right, YouTube, I'm gonna hop off of here. I'm gonna just focus on Periscope. Hope you guys all have a great day. I'll see you guys Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, with me, Mr. Marco, the Bearded Truth, Jason Live.